Hello everyone and welcome back to the Dungeon Learner's Guide. Today we've got another of our daily Pride Month decks. This is deck number 3 and it's titled Da Bears. And if you've missed the first couple of episodes, what we're doing for the entire month of June is building a commander deck for Magic the Gathering using 2 non-partner commanders, working with a budget of $100 or less, so that way we can celebrate the diversity of the LGBTQ+ community for every day in June. Today's video is going to be on a couple of unique commanders that don't necessarily synergize, but work in a unique way. And those commanders are Halsin, Emerald Archdruid, and Kudo, King Among Bears. So Halsin is 3 and a green for a 2/4 legendary creature elf druid. You can pay 1, and until end of turn, target token you control becomes a green bear creature with base power and toughness 4/4 in addition to its other colors and types. It also has choose a background, but we're not worried about that one today. And his partner is Kudo, King Among Bears, which is a green and a white for a 2/2 legendary creature bear. Other creatures have base power and toughness 2/2 and are bears in addition to their other types. So they don't synergize perfectly together because Halsin's going to be making 4/4 bears and Kudo's going to be making 2/2 bears, but I figured just having bears would probably be enough. So let's take a look at some of our themes and break down how exactly this deck is meant to function. The first obvious theme is bears. We are loaded up with as many bears as we can possibly play in the deck, and a lot of them are naturally 2/2s, so they're not getting downgraded with Kudo, but we still have ways to also make tokens with our bears, which can then be upgraded with Halsin. So a good example of this is Mother Bear, which is 1 and a green for a 2/2 bear, and other than that, it has no abilities that can be done when it's on the battlefield, but when it's in your graveyard, you can pay 3 green and exile Mother Bear from your graveyard to create 2 2/2 green bear creature tokens. This can only be done though at sorcery speed. So this is a great way to have 1 bear that eventually can turn into 2 bears, and then those 2 bears can be pumped up by Halsin and turned into 4/4s. So that's kind of our goal. We really just want to flood the board with as many bears as possible. Moving into our next theme, this one is going to be tokens. As I already mentioned a little bit with Mother Bear, we want to have ways to create tokens of bears so Halsin can turn them into bigger bears. And a good example of that is Ayula's Influence, which is green for an enchantment that says you can discard a land card and make a 2/2 green bear creature token. This is a great way to kind of empty out our hand of maybe unnecessary lands and be able to get a ton of creatures, but it is also worth mentioning that this can be done at instant speed. So if someone attacks you with a bunch of creatures, you can surprise make a bunch of bears, block, as long as you have the lands in your hand to discard. And then of course that's going to trigger some of our bear synergies and kind of lead us down the path toward victory. Our final theme for the deck is going to be focused in on creatures with no abilities. Because a lot of bears are simply just 2/2 creatures, we want to find ways to make them more powerful than just a 2/2, because if we're being honest, a 2/2 in Commander isn't really going to get you very far. So to that end, we have Ruxa Patient Professor, which is 2 green for a 4/4 legendary creature bear druid. Whenever she enters the battlefield or attacks, return target creature card with no abilities from your graveyard to your hand. Then, creatures you control with no abilities get +1/+1, and you may have creatures you control with no abilities assign their combat damage as though they weren't blocked. So all those 2/2 bear tokens that we're making with Ayula's Influence now become 3/3s with Ruxa, and even if they get blocked, still do their damage to an opponent. This makes it really difficult for our opponents to stop us in combat, because they know that they may be able to block our creatures, but we're still going to be doing damage to them. Plus, whenever Ruxa's attacking, we're able to return creatures with no abilities from our graveyard to our hand. Admittedly, there are not a ton of those. A lot of cards that could be returned have abilities, so it's a little bit hit or miss on that one, but it's still relevant to have. Anyway, those are all of our themes for this week, and the next thing I want to do is take a look at some of our key cards, and these are cards that synergize really well with each other, and in some cases can be win conditions or value pieces all on their own. So our very first key card is going to be Ayula, Queen Among Bears. And Ayula is 1 and a green for a 2/2 legendary creature bear. Whenever another bear enters the battlefield under your control, choose 1. You can either put 2 +1/+1 counters on target bear, or target bear you control fights target creature you don't control. This is probably the best bear in the entire deck because it lets our 2/2s get bigger by putting +1/+1 counters on them, but it also acts as a form of removal. So every time we play a bear, or not even play, if we make tokens, it still counts. We can then use those creatures to fight other creatures, getting them out of the way, getting in for combat damage, and it really does everything we want it to do because, like I said, it makes our board bigger, clears the way for our attacks, and even if it's removed, it was just 2 mana for a 2/2, so it's not like we're losing a bunch in tempo if someone does answer Ayula. Moving on to our second key card, this one is Bootlegger's Stash. And this one looks a little bit weird considering we've been talking almost entirely about bears, but it is 5 and a green for an artifact that says lands you control have tap, create a treasure token. Yes, this is very powerful ramp, but that's actually not really why we want to be using it. We can make all of these treasure tokens, and then with Halsin's ability, we can turn them into 4/4 bears. Halsin does not specify that you can only turn creature tokens into 4/4s, it's any token. So if we have, say, 6 lands, because that's how much it takes to cast a Bootlegger's Stash, we tap all 6 lands, we make 6 treasures. Next turn, we can then tap our 6 lands again to pay for Halsin's ability 6 times and have 6 4/4 bears that are now ready to attack. So while it's not the fastest and flashiest combo, it's still a card that works incredibly well with everything we're trying to do and with our commanders in the command zone. And then finally, moving on to our last key card, this one is Surrak and Goreclaw, probably, just like Ayula, one of the best bears we have. And that is 4 green for a 6/5 legendary creature human bear. It has trample, gives other creatures you control trample, and whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on it and it gains haste until the end of turn. Being able to get through combat damage is incredibly important with this deck, which is why I wanted to highlight Ruxa earlier as well. But Surrak and Goreclaw is giving everything trample, which is phenomenal when we have 4/4s with Halsin or larger bears with Ayula, and it's also going to be giving +1/+1 counters to our non-token bears, turning them from 2/2s into 3/3s, and giving everything haste, so we can attack the turn that they come down, meaning that we don't have to wait a turn for our opponents to realize that we have too many creatures, and for them to deal with it with a board wipe of some sort. So Surrak and Goreclaw really just hits kind of all the marks that we want for this deck, with the trample, the counters, and the haste, so it's just really an all-star and kind of exemplifies our key cards. That, though, is the end of our key cards, and the next piece of our deck tech is to take a look at some of the cool interactions that exist in the deck. These are cards that work really well together, and in a lot of cases are just kind of fun cards that I wanted to highlight. So the first pair of cards I want to talk about is Words of Wilding and Oran Frostfang. Words of Wilding, 2 and a green for an enchantment that says you can pay 1 mana, and the next time you would draw a card this turn, make a 2/2 green bear creature token instead. This normally is not going to be incredibly powerful because we don't really want to skip our draw step to make bears. But if we have something like Oran Frostfang, which is 3 green for a 2/6 snow creature snake, attacking creatures you control have death touch, and whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. This is a great way to ensure that we still get our card draw every single turn, but then if we go to combat and we attack, say even just with 3 bears, and they all get in, they all deal damage, we will then put triggers on the stack to draw 3 cards. we can activate Words of Wilding, pay 3 mana, and instead of drawing those 3 cards, we make 3 more bears. This kind of allows us to keep making more bears, keep getting in for damage, keep making more bears, and if we ever don't want to pay to make more bears, then we just draw the cards with the Frostfang, which is also very good, refills our hand. It's definitely one of those cards that is good in both cases, because sometimes we will want to draw the cards, and other times we will want to make the bears. But being able to have both gives us the opportunity to make that choice at any point in the game, depending on what we need most. That, though, is only cool interaction number 1, and we're going to move on to cool interaction number 2, which is between Shatter the Sky and Caller of the Claw. Now, admittedly, Shatter the Sky could be any board wipe, but I just like Shatter the Sky, so that's what we talked about. It is 2 white for a sorcery. Each player who controls a creature with power 4 or greater draws a card, then destroy all creatures. Like I said, this could be any board wipe. The important part here is that it destroys all creatures. That becomes relevant when we look at Caller of the Claw, which is 2 and a green for a 2/2 elf, one of the few non-bears in the deck. It has flash, and when it enters the battlefield, put a 2/2 green bear creature token onto the battlefield for each non-token creature put into your graveyard from the battlefield this turn. So this is a great way to kind of flood our board with creatures, and then we can wipe our own board if our opponents are getting a little bit too out of hand, and know that we can cast Caller of the Claw to be able to refill our board, make a ton of bear tokens, and put ourselves in a position where we've gotten rid of everyone else's board, but kind of just kept our own. Now, this is another thing that we don't technically need to wipe our own board. We could hold on to the Caller and wait for someone else to do it for us, but this is a great way to just kind of force the issue and make sure that we're doing things on our terms, rather than hoping someone wipes the board and then finding out they just have a farewell and they exile everything instead, because that's not going to work with Caller of the Claw. So that is something to be aware of. That, though, brings us to the last piece of our deck tech for today, and that is going to be the price of the deck. And today, our total deck price came in at $97.93, with the most expensive card being Casal Lurkwood Pathfinder. And you may also recognize this card as one of the D&D Universes Beyond cards. I believe it's Doric from the D&D movie. But Casal is 3 and a green for a 3/3 legendary creature tiefling druid. She has vigilance. When she enters, search your library for a forest, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. And whenever she attacks, you may pay 1 and a green. If you do, transform her. Now, you may already notice this has nothing to do with bears or anything that we are trying to do, so obviously the backside, which is Casal Pathbreaker Owlbear, definitely does. The backside is a 6/6 legendary creature bird bear with vigilance, trample, and when it transforms into Casal Pathbreaker Owlbear, other legendary creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain trample until the end of turn. Then, at the beginning of your upkeep, transform Casal. So this is one of those cards that really works well when we're starting to go wide. If we have Halsin, we have Ayula, we have Ruxa, all of these legendary creatures are going to be able to get +2/+2 and trample, and then we just transform Casal back and we can do it again next turn. Plus we have this massive 6/6 vigilance trample to be able to deal with anyone who's going to attack back into us. And obviously that's not the be-all end-all of bears. If you do need to trim on budget, she is a massive $22, so you very easily can swap her out for something else and bring the price of the deck down quite a bit, but I do think she's fun to keep in if you don't mind a little bit of a price spike. That, though, is the end of our deck tech for today. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have any interest in our other daily Pride Month decks, we're obviously only on day number 3. I will be doing these every single day for the entire month of June, so you've got 30 deck techs to look forward to. And if you want a little refresher on all of those decks, you can check out our video from last year where I kind of ran down each of these 30 decks in very quick succession and didn't go super in depth, but still something to take a look at. Otherwise, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you to all of our patrons and channel members. If you would like to join them, check us out on patreon.com and right here on YouTube as a channel member. But thank you again. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Happy Pride Month, everybody, and I will see you on the other side of the Dungeon Learner's Guide.